Welcome back to another Locked On Chiefs, part of the Locked On Network here on YouTube, as well as on all of the podcast platforms that you enjoy, whether it's slow to update or not. You know, you can always get off of Apple and check out Spotify, Amazon, Odyssey, all of them, because you can find us there, as well as Williamson and Peacock, our new flagship show that are off on their own feed. Check them out as well. We have some things to talk about as the Chiefs are in town. Who's going to be where? Did Frank make it? What is the goal for this period? And I think we'll start with, a couple of fresh looks. Welcome to Locked On Chiefs.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Hey.
Howdy.
By the time you guys hear this, it will be, some of you will hear it the night before. It'll be the eve of MiniCamp, but players have started to ascend. We're going to talk about Frank Clark here coming up in a little bit, as well as what the goal is for what this weekend is, week 3, whatever these 3 practices are, goals. But first, we got a little bit of some fresh looks at some of the players as they had their media day on Monday.
Yep. And it's good to see those guys in there having fun. Chris Jones, Taco Charlton, saw Tyrann Mathieu as well. All those guys are having a good time. So good to see that.
I think the guy that scared me the most was Derek Nottie. I think he scared some of the set supervisors as well. So more power to him. But it looked
like Rimmers actually got to take video of Zeus of Orlando Brown. So I'm sure the players were having fun with that. Good to see them goofing off still and having a good time.
Yeah, I will not be referring to him as Zeus. I'm just going to tell you guys. I just can't do it.
That's how they refer to him in the tweet that I saw. So that's just what I went with. So
Z2 maybe, but we'll see what Travis has to say about any of that. But
right.
But that said, that's what today is get a glimpse, see where everybody's at. This is like dress up in uniforms, quote unquote, with not much pads in them. I don't even think I saw a thigh pad the whole day. And that's fine. But these are the pieces they film now, they shoot pictures now that they'll use all season long in promos, in anything that goes on the networks, a bunch of stuff. But you can see how guys kind of group together. The defensive linemen are all kind of, shouting and being intimidating. Like I like that. Chris Jones, of course, he lets out this shriek after he does this like really intimidating move that if you didn't have the sound for would be scary, I think, for at least the fans. And then he's
having fun though.
Right. It's just funny to me. You see the tendencies as they go along. Taco has his hair built like his mentor, like all kinds of little things. But this is like the looseness before they get down to work tomorrow. And I think that's a good sign. We saw this. I thought it was a little tight last year, but I think we saw this again in the 2019 season when it was, going for broke. I think that's a good sign when you're about to get down to work.
Well, and you have to remember that all of this last year was not going on because you had COVID last year. So you didn't have all this stuff that you were shooting right now. You didn't have the ability to goof around with your teammates like they have right now. So the guys are taking advantage of it. And actually, Nate Taylor had an article about Willie Gay that came out on the Athletic on Monday talking about how the transition from the NFL last year was so much harder because you really didn't get anything until you were actually, at training camp.
Yeah. Run around trying to make tackles.
Right. So, could be a big thing for a lot of players this year going into year 2 and going into year 3 when they usually are taking jumps, and maybe even some players that are going into year 4 that normally you would expect a big jump going into year 3, maybe didn't get it because of the weird offseason last year.
Yeah, and that sets the whole tone. And this is really what I think it boils down to. That sets the tone for tomorrow, which sets the tone for this 3-day period.
Right.
And then it's everybody's loose and going to hang out, get some downtime, rest your body, and get prepared for training camp. So it seems like this is not the culmination of the off season, but is like the last step as you're walking up to the diving board trying to get off the ledge.
Right. And, there's anticipation, there's, nervous energy, even if you're not nervous going off the diving board, you're just nervous about the season in general. In this case, you're nervous about the season in general. You may be excited for it, but it's all still nervous tension and nervous energy. So a lot of things are going to be working itself out in the next couple of days. Some of these teammates haven't really seen each other the guys that haven't been around for OTAs may not know some of their new teammates.
Yeah, that's the hard part, and especially luckily they've been able to cobble some of these things together. The offensive line, we'll see what the lineup is tomorrow with the Kyle Long injury, right? There are a couple of things they're going to be shifting, and I think what you're looking for is one of the goals that we'll talk about later in the show is really just kind of taking the whole thing and bumping it up a little bit, get the bar raised, get a little bit of work done before you kind of split for the summer.
Well, and players always talk about just trying to get 1% better a day, and it's those continual improvements. And that's something you can really do in this mini camp, because you're going to be in a situation where the tempo is going to be a little bit picked up from the OTAs, and you're going to get an idea of what the guys ahead of you are going to be like, because you really haven't seen that in OTAs. Everybody's kind of just going through the motions a little bit more. Now, when you're getting into mini camp, it's going to be a little bit more serious, which will then obviously crank up a lot more when you get to training camp.
Yeah. And that's really the goal, is set the tone, get ready, get set. One guy in particular that we talked about yesterday, I want to get into, as well as what this is going to look like for that unit in particular. We'll do that coming up next.
The chain stores have different price tiers for professional mechanics versus us do-it-yourselfers, but RockAuto.com's prices are the same for everybody, and they're reliably low. RockAuto.com always offers the lowest prices possible rather than changing their prices based on whims like the airlines do. RockAuto.com is for everybody and does not require a membership or an account login. RockAuto.com is a family business serving auto parts customers online for 20 years. Go to RockAuto.com to shop for auto and body parts from hundreds of manufacturers. The RockAuto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle and choose brands, specifications, and prices you prefer. Best of all, prices at RockAuto.com are always reliably low, and the same for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Why spend twice the money for the same parts? Go to RockAuto.com now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices. All the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com.
So following up on what we talked about yesterday, we were right. I know, hey, if you missed that episode, we talked about Frank Clark needing to be in camp and that he should be. We had a couple other things too. Go back and check out Monday's episode if you missed it. But no surprise to you, right?
No, and we are on YouTube if you didn't know that. So go check us out on YouTube as well. Go give us a subscription on YouTube. Check us out. And as some people have already said, you can see me now. Congratulations. No, and I'm glad Frank Clark is there, and I'm glad that all the players are there, and I think it's a good scenario for this team going forward. So it's going to be very intriguing to see what happens on that unit and how they're going to rotate guys, because right now you have Frank Clark, and then you have a bunch of questions.
Yeah, and it comes down to he's in the building, and you can feel like whether it's other players' Instagrams or just the way, and that's what I was referring to in the first segment, is like Taco is styling his look after Frank. Like, he is a leader without being present. Like, his mere presence in the locker room changes things for a lot of guys, offense and defense.
And I don't disagree with that, but I would also take it a step further and say, which is what makes it a little disappointing, he wasn't in OTAs. Because he is looked at as such a big leader, that would be a bigger deal if he was there, because it really sets a tone for the entire unit. So to have as many people there as were, that's a very good sign for Kansas City going forward, obviously. And I do want to throw this out there really quick on something else we talked about yesterday. Thank you, Tyrann Mathieu, for basically sticking up for your head coach, which I expected, but
Yeah, but he once again, like Tyrann said a couple weeks ago, he deletes a lot of tweets, but he tweets a lot. So good for him. Like, put it out there. And it's funny because I was going to bring him up as well. Like, the difference between, and I don't think we should underestimate the fact that Frank Clark is right up there with Tyrann Mathieu in terms of being a leader on this defensive side of the ball. Maybe not as vocal overall, because I think the offensive players drift towards Tyrann as well, because he makes plays, because he's a guy that in practice keeps you honest, keeps you working. But the two of them together, I think, is the dynamic duo. And that's nothing against Chris Jones. Chris Jones is, I think everybody can tell, has the personality that lightens the locker room.
Right. And the interesting thing to me in that whole scenario is that neither Jones nor Clark are the guys that the defensive room calls the captain. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's Tyrann Mathieu, but it's also Anthony Hitchens. To me, that still says a lot about Hitchens and the leadership that they think he brings to the table.
Yeah, and you have to have it like at every level of the defense. I thought one thing that went under noticed in the apology that Bell put out was how he made the comment about how tight-knit and family-like the locker room really is. And that's something that goes back several years, how you heard things said. You heard the way they approached things as a family, like circling the wagons and getting everybody inside that room that needed to be that room. I like to see that that's continuing as the roster itself evolves.
No, and I completely agree with you. And that's something that I've talked about ad nauseum every single time it comes up. When we start talking about team building, I talk about chemistry. And this is when you build that chemistry. That's another reason why it's great that Kansas City had 80 players there. You're building team chemistry, and you're building basically a family unit. And that's what is so important about these times. So I get why players don't want to do it, but I think that's part of what has made Kansas City such a powerhouse the past couple of seasons, is because they are so close and they are going to do just about anything they can for their brothers.
Yeah. And when you can build that, you know that you can sustain it. It's not like you're showing up to camp and like trying to do activities when you're not studying, because really there isn't a whole lot of time where you're not studying.
Or playing Madden, but yeah.
Right, that becomes a bonding factor.
It does.
Like they're not going to do that this week because they got actual X's and Y's to do. But this is the OTAs being a glorified passing camp. I think that plays into what you're talking about, because the NFLPA wants less work, but at least it's less impact. It's less, churning around. The fact that Kyle Long got hurt in an OTA rather than a minicamp or training camp when things do step up, I think that's unfortunate. But I think that's the rarity at this point.
Yeah, and do you have any? I wish. I'm glad they don't, but at the same time, I just wish at some point we could see the players playing Madden. Because can you imagine all those players just going off on each other and just talking the maddest crap? I mean, it would be glorious. I mean, you see tweets between some of the guys already, so you could just imagine what it would be like.
Yeah, this is why I don't play online.
I understand that too. I get it. I think it'd be fun, but no, I get it as well, because you don't want to put that stuff out there. You don't want people trying to divide you. So it is what it is. But I'm glad that they have those times, and I'm glad that they are able to act like a team and act like a family, because I think that's huge going, especially when you're talking about going into, something where you're hoping to play 20 games, 21 games this year.
Yeah, and like Matt and I talked about last year, if you're talking about the future, when you look at like Mahomes under contract for the next 200 games now, if they make it to those Super Bowls, let's not talk about winning, just getting to that point. The length of the season is now almost terrifying in its length if you get to that point.
And you have to wonder how that's going to play into things going down, through the seasons. And I don't want to get off too much on track, but if you start thinking about it, you're talking 200 games, you're right. If they're making it to the Super Bowl, how many games is he going to miss? And I'm not talking injury. I'm talking like, are they going to get to a point where they can get so far ahead where they give him a game or two off? Because I think you're going to need that at some point in the future when you're talking about that many games for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it becomes about the longevity and getting everybody on the same track, going the same direction. That's what we have to talk about next, because that is not just the overarch for the entire season. It's for what has to happen right now. That gets started here next week. We're going to talk about goals for this minicamp coming up next.
We've been telling you about BuiltBar, the best tasting protein bar on the market, for a while now. BuiltBar is the amazing low-calorie, low-sugar, high-protein, high-fiber, amazing tasting protein bar with 100% chocolate on all the bars. And we recognize it's been hard to keep up with the brackets and all the new flavors, but let's remember, when it all comes said and done, there are a couple things that really stand out, like cookies and cream with 17 grams of protein at 130 calories, or almond coconut, which is one of my favorites still. And you can get a serious discount over at BuiltBar.com by using the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 50% off your next order. That's the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Football might be over, but the NBA, college basketball, and NHL are going to be back in full swing, and BetOnline even covers award shows, reality TV, all kinds of stuff. Real-time updated odds and props on almost anything you can imagine. BetOnline has you covered for all the news, scores, and odds. It's the best way to place your bets, and it's free to sign up. Head over to the website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. The promo code's Locked On for BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
This one, by the way, might be my newest favorite, the chunk. I always forget the chunk part, but coconut brownie in chunk.
Dude, that is so good.
It's crazy.
That is so good.
So you guys probably want to check that out. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you definitely want to check that out. That is, honestly, I think that's the one that won the bracket. You talk about the bracket in the commercial, and I'm pretty sure that's the one that won the bracket, and there's a reason it won the bracket. It is delicious. And I'm not a big coconut fan, but whew,
yeah. You got to keep them around, you know. Yep. That's just the bottom line. So
I'm just impressed you still have some, but that's me.
I hid those from my kids. That's why.
Well, I know, but you haven't eaten them is my point.
I'm rationing.
There you go. Fair enough.
At the end of the day, I think that this is like, for the rookies, it's clearly, hey, this is going to go up another level. You've gotten kind of into the flow. You've gotten into where things are at in the building, like where the training room is, like how long it takes to get somewhere, get a meal, get back in for treatment, et cetera, et cetera. But now it's like, now the competition starts to come in a little bit more. It's not just running the right routes or making the right move with X foot to get in position to make a block. Now things step up a little bit. You're actually going to run, I think, some tempo, and we'll see what happens. But
and also it's not just the rookies; it's also the new guys that are coming in that were signed as free agents, or the guys that, you know, any of those types of guys that are new to the system this year. They're stepping into, everything's going to take a step up, but they also don't know how the Chiefs are going to run things. They have an idea based on OTAs. But OTAs are different than minicamp. And minicamp is going to be way different than training camp. And training camp is going to be way different than in the season. And I know we're talking about minicamp here, but it's just all a progression. And that's really the key here, that they're going to get on the right step, and that's where they're headed right now.
Well, and that's my first goal for it. For all those guys, I mean, you know, we're talking about basically the entire offensive line unit.
Right.
The whole rookie class and a number of other guys that weren't here on the roster before, is making that next step, getting used to the first increase in tempo. Because you're right, it's going to go up to tomorrow. Well, it's going to go up for camp. It's going to go up for the season.
And think about the guys that weren't here last year, that were here last year as rookies but didn't actually play, like Niang. This is going to be all new to him too. I mean, you're going to be dealing with things that you just didn't expect to be dealing with in your second year, and that's fine. And they're going to have to adjust, and they will make adjustments, and that's great. But it's all going to be a whole new deal. And I'm really excited to see how the line gels, because that's going to really determine how this season is going to go for Kansas City. Because if the offensive line plays anything like what it looks like it should be built as, this team is going to be a lot of fun to watch and a lot of fun to talk about.
Yeah, I think so.
It's going to drive you nuts, because there's not going to be running the ball very much. And so say goodbye to your fullback.
We'll see. You never know. It might swing the other way. But
I doubt it.
That first upgrade in tempo is important, especially for that offensive line unit. Being able to reset, get going, know where you're supposed to be. That's my first goal. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's my second goal, because the first goal should always be, don't get anybody hurt these next 3 days.
Stay injury free.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it sucks that it's Kyle Long after that comeback out of retirement that is going to be delayed. But I will say this, that extra week to prepare, he's missing 3 days here. I don't think that's going to hurt him in terms of adaptation to anything but practice tempo, to tell you the truth.
Right.
If he is back for the beginning of camp.
Yeah, the big question is going to be, is he going to be back for the beginning of camp, or is he going to be back for the beginning of the season? The other question is going to be, LDT is supposed to be there. I haven't heard anything. I've been looking, but I haven't heard that he's there. I would imagine he is. But he's going to be getting back into this after having a year off. How's he going to look? How is he going to be dealing with a completely revamped offensive line? Almost nobody is there that he was there with just 2 years ago.
Only the guy that replaced him.
Right. It's pretty much the entire unit is different. He knows Allegretti and he knows Wiley, and that's about it.
Yeah. Well, and it's a position that he can walk into and be a source of continuity for what the playbook is, for how Heck wants things done, et cetera, et cetera. Let's let him knock the rust off these 3 days and see what he can do in camp. So those two priorities aside, What do you want to see done on the field, positionally, personnel-wise? What are you looking for?
I think you have to look and see how the wide receivers react, because you're going to get a little bit more bump and go. I mean, it's still not hands-on. It's still not contact really, but that's going to happen in minicamp because you're going to be going and doing different drills. So how do the wide receivers react? Because beyond Tyreek Hill, there's question marks at just about every wide receiver position. I do think they have talent, but the question is, are they going to be able to step in and perform the way that Kansas City needs them to? And then also, what are you going to get at the tight end group? Because you know what you have at Travis Kelce, but what are you going to get from the other guys? So it's all just a big question mark right now.
So you stole mine in the tight end group, that's for sure. But
well, you're welcome, because I figure you like defense, so I was giving you what you like.
See, I was trying to go away from that,
Well, but you always talk about defense, so I mean, you could talk about your fullback if you want to go there.
He'll play teams. It's cool. No, in fact, this 3-day stretch might be the time where you see him run a wheel or something impressive that we'll see, once in week 6 maybe. Right. So you just got to get it in there early. But no, on the opposite side, though, is who's rotating down. I think we're going to see Snead on the outside. The question is how many reps, like we talked about yesterday, does Ward get? And what does that do for the nickel? I am waiting for this to become a camp battle between Fenton and Hughes. I'm not sure if it's going to get there. Like, I need some kind of indicator this week. If Hughes is gaining ground, getting used to the system. Right now, it's clearly Rashad Fenton is your third corner. That's going to be a very pivotal role, and I want to see if he gets any push.
Well, and I also have to wonder, and I really hope I'm wrong on this, but I wonder how much we're going to get. Like, how much information are we actually going to get? The people that are actually able to be there and cover camp really are giving us as much information as we have, but they're only allowed on like Thursdays. So are they going to be allowed for the entire practice? Are we going to be able to get live tweeting like they sometimes do in camp? Is that what this situation is going to be like? Or is it going to be pretty much media blackout and we just have to read stories? I don't know.
I understand, there will be no live tweeting whatsoever.
Right. So, and that was my guess. So then you're sitting in a situation where you're reading what they're allowed to write, and who knows what they're going to be allowed to write. So I hate saying it, but I still think we're going to have a lot of questions that are going to be unanswered until training camp. And that's just the reality.
That's absolutely true. We can get some hints. Like, I do notice when I look at some of the images that are out there of practice, you see positional groups. Like, you see that Ben Neiman is running with the threes. I think that's a positive sign for Nick Bolton. Does that carry over? Do the beat reporters get to see that? Do we actually find out where a somewhat meaningful depth chart is? Because the coaches are not always with the PR department.
Right. And they don't want some of that stuff out there either as well. So that's part of it as well. So how does that all play in? And I'm looking forward to training camp. I'm really excited to go to training camp again this year. So I'm excited to see how that ends up, and we're going to have stuff for you during training camp, obviously. But I'm just wondering, I'm trying to, push the brakes a little bit, just figuring that we're not going to get most of the answers that we would want right now, just because they're not going to allow it to all come out. And that's unfortunately the likely scenario, in my opinion.
Yeah. I am eagerly awaiting training camp dates, et cetera, so we can figure something out. I probably have to travel if we're going to get that done. Let's hope that they come down on the side of everybody can attend if they like, but we'll have more on that when we do find out. I do expect some kind of announcement in the next week or so, because there has to be planning that is finalizing as we speak. So knock on wood.
And they're going back, right? So they're going back to St. Joe, because everything was supposed to be at St. Joe, but they did everything in Kansas City last year. So is this the last year we're doing in St. Joe? Is this the last year that they're going to have training camp in St. Joe? Because I believe this is the last one that they have under contract. So that's something that we'll be watching as well.
Oh, I thought they had extended, but maybe I'm wrong. Either way, I'm more concerned about if there's going to be limits on who can be in attendance in terms of the number of fans, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Rules should be coming, and probably my guess is they're going to sneak it in on the tail end of this mini camp so that it slides under the radar. But we will have all the information for you. If you would like to know more, hit us at Locked On Chiefs.
It's going to be a Friday afternoon special, I guarantee it.
Yeah, right. Just the last
or Saturday afternoon. I wouldn't put it past Kansas City to do a Saturday either.
Just to see if we're paying attention, right?
Right.
Well, if you guys are paying attention, you have comments, hit us at Locked On Chiefs. Put it in the iTunes reviews. We appreciate you getting those to us. And, the 5 stars are always more appreciated. I like to see 5 shiny things. That's just the way that it is. And we will keep giving these to you if you keep checking it out. Also, like and sub on YouTube. And for those of you that have been over there, comments are always appreciated. So is that thumbs up thing. It's a whole different world than the podcasts are.
Yes, it is.
And we trying to do
you listening and watching. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're bridging the gap. We hope you guys enjoy this first practice. We'll be back with you again tomorrow. Thanks for watching this one. We'll talk to you then.